In a small town in northern Italy lived a family, Maria and her husband Luca. Maria was 32, Luca 35. Several years earlier, before the birth of their child, they had taken out a loan to buy a car. At the time, it seemed like a logical and even necessary decision. Luca worked close to home, his schedule was stable, and although his salary was not high, it was predictable. Maria herself never ended up driving. She tried going to driving school twice, but quit both times. She was frightened by the roads, other drivers, and the constant tension. After each lesson, she came home exhausted and in tears, and eventually decided that extra stress was simply not worth it. Some time later, Luca received an offer to move to a new job, much better paid, but with constant stress, overtime, and regular business trips. He didn't hesitate for long. They needed the money, Maria was expecting a baby, and besides the car loan, they still had a couple of older debts to pay off. The new job did bring in more money, but it also meant that Luca was hardly ever home. He commuted by train, and the car was unnecessary. The road to the workplace ran along a rough dirt track, and he didn't want to ruin the vehicle. Taking the car on business trips made no sense either. The car spent more and more time sitting idle in the yard, and that was when Luca's relatives took an interest in it, his mother Anna and his younger sister Chiara. They had long asked to be included in the insurance, claiming they would help Maria with the baby and drive her to doctors and shops. On paper, it sounded reasonable, and Luca agreed. In reality, things turned out very differently. As soon as the keys were in Anna's and Chiara's hands, the car became their personal means of transport. Trips to the market, visits to friends, outings to the countryside, or simply running errands. When Maria genuinely needed help, to urgently take the child to a doctor or buy medicine, the car was often unavailable. The relatives had suddenly gone off on their own business and would return at some unknown time. Maria complained to her husband more than once. Luca talked to his mother and sister for a short while they became more attentive, but everything quickly returned to the same pattern. Meanwhile, all expenses, insurance, inspections, loan payments, continued to be covered from Maria's and Luca's family budget. Anna and Chiara occasionally filled up the tank, but more often they didn't bother, assuming that since the car was family property, everything was fine. Almost a year passed. The child was a year and a half old, benefits were about to end, and it became obvious that Luca's salary alone was not enough to cover all their obligations. The car loan consumed a significant part of the income, even though the couple themselves barely used the car. Maria increasingly insisted that it would be more reasonable to sell the vehicle and relieve themselves of at least one financial burden. Luca resisted for a long time. He had dreamed of owning a car, barely had the chance to drive it, and hoped that his business trips would soon end so he could earn extra money using the car. Maria understood his feelings, but each time brought the conversation back to reality. Food, utility bills, and a child were needed now, not in some distant, happy future. Eventually, she managed to get through to him. She calmly explained that occasional trips were cheaper and easier to make by taxi than maintaining a car that mostly served other people. Luca agreed. He went to his mother's house, took back the keys and documents, and informed her that the car would be sold. Anna and Chiara were confronted with the decision. The reaction was explosive. Maria's and Luca's phones rang nonstop. The relatives spoke in unison about how difficult things would now be for them, how Maria hadn't thought it through, how she would manage with a child without a car. At the same time, Chiara owned a car of her own, which she used herself, and their mother could easily reach the pharmacy or visit friends by bus, taxi, or even on foot. When Maria reminded them that there had been no help during the most difficult moments, the conversations immediately changed direction. Maria even suggested a compromise. If they needed the car so badly, they could pool their money and buy it at a minimal price, almost without markup. But that option did not suit the relatives. It was far more convenient to use someone else's car without bearing any responsibility for it. In the end, Maria felt relief for the first time in a long while. The decision had been made, and despite the pressure and attempts to guilt her, she understood that at last the family had stopped carrying a burden that had long become an unaffordable luxury.